Little black girl helps a millionaire fix his Mustang. When he sees the ring on her finger. The sun, merciless and unrelenting, cast its rays upon the rural road, making the asphalt shimmer with heat. Maya Johnson, a 10-year-old girl with colorful braids, walked home from school. Her steps were slow, the weight of her worn backpack pulling her shoulders down, but she didn't mind. Inside the backpack, besides her books, was something more precious, a small toolkit her Uncle Leon had given her. He was a mechanic, and he had taught her the basics of fixing engines ever since she could remember. As she walked, Maya's attention was caught by a car, a shiny, red Shelby GT 500 Mustang, parked on the side of the road. Its hood was up, exposing the engine like a mouth wide open. Standing next to the car was a white man in a suit that surely cost more than all the furniture in Maya's house. He was pacing back and forth, his phone pressed tightly to his ear. "I don't care how much you charge for the tow. I've been stuck here for 2 hours. I have a meeting with the governor in less than 3 hours, for God's sake," he was yelling, his face twisted in frustration. He checked his solid gold watch impatiently. Maya stopped, her curiosity piqued. She thought about her aunt, Renee, who had always warned her to avoid talking to strangers, especially ones who didn't belong in this small, mostly black community that lay 2 hours outside of Boston. But something about this man's desperation made her hesitate. He looked lost. After a moment, Maya adjusted the weight of her backpack and walked toward him. She wasn't sure what she was about to do, but something inside told her she might be able to help. "Excuse me, sir," she called, her voice shy but firm. "Need some help with your car?" Andrew Whitaker, the CEO of Whitaker Enterprises and the owner of much of Boston's commercial real estate, turned in surprise. His irritation quickly shifted to condescension as he took in the sight of the small girl in faded shorts and an oversized MIT t-shirt, her colorful braids standing out against her dark skin. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with a patronizing tone. "But this is a high-performance vehicle. I need a real mechanic." Maya shrugged, stepping closer to the engine with a confidence that seemed to surprise Andrew. She leaned over the hood and peered into the machinery. "My uncle has a garage," she explained. "He's been teaching me about cars since I could walk. I can at least take a look." Before Andrew could protest, Maya dropped her backpack onto the ground and started inspecting the engine. Her small fingers moved with surprising precision. "When did the problem start?" she asked, her voice professional as if she'd done this 1,000 times before. Andrew sighed, realizing he had nothing to lose. "The engine started overheating about 40 minutes ago, and then it just died." Maya tilted her head thoughtfully. "Did you smell anything sweet, like syrup?" she asked. Andrew blinked, surprised. "Yes, now that you mention it. How did you know?" Maya pointed to a small puddle under the car, barely noticeable unless you knew what you were looking for. "Cooling system," she said confidently. "It's leaking coolant. That's why it overheated." As Maya worked, Andrew watched her with growing curiosity. There was something oddly familiar about the way she focused on the engine, how she scanned the parts with intelligent eyes, her brow furrowing slightly in concentration. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly, his voice tinged with a hint of admiration. "Maya." "Maya Johnson," she replied, holding out a hand that was stained with grease from the inspection. Andrew shook it hesitantly, unsure what to make of this little girl who was fixing his high-end car with such expertise. "Andrew Whitaker," he said. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Whitaker." Maya continued working, opening her backpack and pulling out a small metal case. "Uncle Leon makes me carry an emergency kit," she explained. "You never know when someone might need help on the road." Andrew watched, fascinated, as Maya worked with impressive efficiency. She quickly located the leak in the radiator hose and applied a special tape to seal it. "That should hold until you get to town," Maya said, standing up and brushing the dirt off her hands. "But you'll need to add water to replace the lost coolant." As she raised her hand to brush a stray lock of hair away from her face, Andrew's eyes were drawn to the ring on her finger. A simple antique gold band with an emerald green stone. It caught the light, reflecting an internal pattern Andrew recognized instantly, an imperfection shaped like a small crescent. A memory rushed back to him. That ring. Andrew's voice faltered as his mind reeled. That's very unusual, he said, his voice trembling. Maya looked down at the ring. It's my mom's, she explained softly. I mean, my adoptive mom, Diana. She passed away last year. A shadow of sadness crossed her face. She said it was a symbol of an important promise. Andrew's heart skipped a beat. He knew that ring. He had given it to a little girl named Maya, a child he had met years ago at an orphanage called Little Angels. That was before the orphanage mysteriously closed, and Andrew had promised to come back for her, a promise he had never kept. May I ask where Diana got this ring? Andrew asked, his voice barely a whisper. Maya shrugged. She never told me exactly. She just said it belonged to someone special, and that one day I'd understand its meaning. Andrew stared at her for a long moment, his mind racing. Could it be? Could this really be the same girl? Before he could say anything more, he pulled himself together and offered Maya a ride. Let me drive you home as a thank you, he said, his voice regaining its usual confidence. Maya hesitated only briefly before nodding. Okay, she said. As they drove through the rural landscape, Andrew asked casual questions about her life, where she went to school, how long she had lived there, who she had lived with since her adoptive mother had died. I live with my Aunt Renee and Uncle Leon, Maya explained. They took me in when Diana died. Have you always lived here? Andrew asked, trying to keep his tone light. Since I was 3, Maya answered. Before that, Diana didn't talk about it much. I know I was adopted from an orphanage called Little Angels. It closed soon after. Andrew's heart nearly stopped. Little Angels? He asked, his voice tight with disbelief. Are you sure? Maya nodded. Yes. Why? Do you know it? Andrew's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he tried to calm the storm of thoughts swirling in his head. Yes, he whispered. I know it. As they approached a modest house, Andrew stopped the car. Maya thanked him and got out. Before she could leave, Andrew handed her a business card. Maya, he said, his voice serious now. If you ever need anything at all, please call me. Maya took the card, her brow furrowing in curiosity. Okay, she said before running toward the house. As Andrew watched her disappear inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was far from an ordinary meeting. His fingers trembled as he picked up his phone and dialed a number. This was no coincidence. His world, and the world of this little girl, were about to change forever. Andrew Whitaker spent the next 3 sleepless nights staring at the enlarged photos of the emerald ring, the one Maya had been wearing. The same ring he had given to a little girl named Maya 12 years ago, just before the orphanage, Little Angels, had mysteriously closed its doors. It had been a promise that Andrew had failed to keep. A promise that now, somehow, seemed to be pulling him back into a past he had long tried to forget. In his office at Whitaker Enterprises, Andrew scattered papers across his desk, the pages containing details of his family's business dealings. His father, Howard Whitaker, had bought the Little Angels property years ago for a fraction of its value, citing financial irregularities as the reason for the purchase. Andrew had taken over the company shortly after, but he had never asked too many questions about the orphanage or why his father had been so eager to acquire it. Mr. Whitaker, Mr. Evans from Legal is here with the Horizon Project documents, his assistant announced, breaking Andrew's concentration. The Horizon Project. A luxury real estate complex currently under construction on the very land where Little Angels had once stood. Andrew quickly shoved the papers away as Evans entered the room. The man handed over the files, but Andrew could barely focus on them. His mind kept drifting back to Maya and the ring. Why are we revisiting old business? Evans asked, noticing Andrew's distracted demeanor. Your father was very specific about keeping these documents on file, Evans continued. Said it was important. Andrew's jaw tightened. My father is retired in Florida, he said coldly. I run the company now. He flicked through the papers, his eyes stopping on one particularly disturbing piece of information, a list of children who had been reallocated after Little Angels had closed. One name was circled in red, Maya Johnson. Underneath it was a note. Special case. Contact H.W. Andrew's breath caught in his throat. His father had always been ruthless in business, but this was something else. Mr. Whitaker, Evans said, bringing him back to the present. The documents for Project Horizon are here. He handed over a new set of papers, but Andrew was too preoccupied to focus on them. Maya Johnson, Andrew muttered under his breath. Who are you really, Maya? As if on cue, his private investigator, Ramirez, called. I found Diana Johnson, Ramirez said over the phone. Car accident last year. Brakes failed. But the circumstances are suspicious. Andrew froze. Brakes failed. He had heard those same words years ago. It had been the excuse his father used to explain the sudden death of a nurse named Diana at Little Angels. It had been swept under the rug at the time, but now, with Maya's appearance, it seemed more than a coincidence. What about the adoption records? Andrew asked, his voice tight with tension. Missing, Ramirez replied. Officially, Maya Johnson never existed at Little Angels. A cold shiver ran down Andrew's spine. The girl in the Mustang, Maya, was connected to his past in ways he couldn't yet fully understand, but he knew one thing for sure. His life, and the life of this little girl, were about to collide in a way neither of them could have predicted. Howard's face twisted into a scowl, but there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. For the first time in years, Andrew saw a crack in his father's facade. The man who had built his empire on secrecy and control now seemed rattled. How do you know this girl? What's the significance of this ring? Howard demanded, his voice sharp. Andrew hesitated. I gave that ring to a little girl named Maya at Little Angels, 12 years ago. He paused, letting the words sink in. I promised I would come back for her. But I never did. Howard stiffened at the mention of the orphanage. He had always been secretive about his dealings with Little Angels, but now, Andrew knew something was horribly wrong. His father had orchestrated the closure of the orphanage for reasons he couldn't yet understand, and now that same orphanage, that same promise, was haunting him. What are you trying to say, Andrew? Howard asked, his voice suddenly cold. I think that ring, the one Maya's wearing, Andrew said slowly, it's tied to something much bigger than I thought. And I think it has to do with what happened at Little Angels. Howard's expression darkened. You've been spending too much time digging into things you don't understand, he warned, his voice low with a dangerous edge. That orphanage is in the past. Let it go. But Andrew couldn't. He couldn't ignore the memories of the orphanage, the children, the promises made, and the fact that Maya was somehow connected to it all. And now, with this new revelation about her, he realized there was more to the story than he had ever imagined. The next day, Maya sat down with her Aunt Renee and Uncle Leon. The letter from Diana, her adoptive mother, was still in her hands, her fingers trembling as she read the words over and over again. She had always known there was something mysterious about her past, but now it was all beginning to make sense. The stories of Little Angels, the strange way her adoptive mother had guarded her past, the ring that had always felt like a key. Maya was starting to see the bigger picture. Maya, Leon began, his voice gentle but firm, there's a lot more to your past than we ever told you. Your mother, Diana, she didn't just take you from that orphanage because she wanted to give you a better life. She was running from something. Maya's heart raced. What do you mean? Leon sighed and glanced at Renee, who nodded. Diana worked at Little Angels. She was one of the nurses there. And she was trying to protect you from the Whitakers. They were interested in certain children at the orphanage. Children with special abilities. Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. Special abilities, she repeated. Yes, Renee said softly. Children like you, Maya. With a gift for fixing things, machines, engines, all kinds of things. They wanted to exploit that gift. Diana took you and ran because she knew what would happen if you stayed. Maya's world tilted. She had always known she was different, but this was something she hadn't expected. Her mind raced as she processed the new information. Leon handed her the letter from Diana. Read it, Maya. It's time you knew the truth. As Maya read, the pieces fell into place. The letter explained everything. How Diana had been forced to flee the orphanage with her, how she had taken her to safety, and how, even now, Maya's life was intertwined with secrets she hadn't known existed. The ring was more than a family heirloom. It was a key to unlocking those secrets. Meanwhile, back at Whitaker Enterprises, Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through his fingers. His investigation had turned up more than he could have ever imagined, and now, as he stared at the reports from his private investigator, he understood why his father had been so determined to bury the past. The documents showed that Little Angels wasn't just a regular orphanage. It had been a front for something much darker, something that went beyond adoption and care. There were notes about children with unusual abilities, children who had been placed under the Whitaker family's control for the purposes of military applications, technological advancements, and even secret experiments. Andrew's stomach churned as he read through the records. He had never fully understood his father's business dealings, but now it was clear that Howard Whitaker had been involved in something far more sinister. The children from Little Angels hadn't just been adopted, they had been taken and tested, their abilities exploited. Maya Johnson, Andrew muttered to himself as he read the report. Special case. Contact HW. His heart raced. He had always thought he was doing the right thing, building his empire, but now he realized how deep the corruption ran. His family had been exploiting children, including Maya, for years. He had to stop it. He couldn't be part of it anymore. At that moment, his phone rang. It was Ramirez again, his private investigator. "I've found something else," Ramirez said urgently. "Maya Johnson, she's not just the girl with the emerald ring. She's part of something much bigger. You need to see this." Andrew's mind raced. What did Ramirez mean? Meanwhile, Maya was still processing everything she had learned. She was sitting in the small workshop, surrounded by tools and machinery, when a thought struck her. Could the Whitakers really have been watching me all these years? The question gnawed at her. The people who had taken her away from the orphanage, the people who had hidden her past from her, were now coming back into her life. And she had a feeling they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. But Maya wasn't afraid. She had learned from her mother that no machine, no matter how broken, was beyond repair. And now, she was about to fix the broken pieces of her past. The next few days felt like a blur for Andrew. Every moment seemed to bring new revelations, each one more disturbing than the last. As the investigation into Little Angels deepened, he found himself questioning everything he had ever known about his family, his business, and even himself. In the back of his mind, a troubling thought kept resurfacing. What if Maya wasn't the only one? What if there were others? His father's actions, the hush-hush dealings, the secretive nature of Whitaker Enterprises, they all seemed to revolve around the same goal, exploiting children with special abilities. The more Andrew dug, the more he realized that Little Angels wasn't just one isolated incident. It was part of a much larger, darker pattern of control, manipulation, and greed. His father had been part of something far more sinister than just real estate deals. His private investigator, Ramirez, had been working tirelessly to uncover the full extent of the Whitaker family's involvement. What he uncovered shocked Andrew to his core. Ramirez found a series of confidential documents that revealed a classified program called Project Prometheus. It was a covert operation designed to identify children with extraordinary talents, abilities like Maya's. The Whitakers had been involved in testing and experimenting on these children, attempting to harness their abilities for military applications, patents, and technological advancements. Andrew slammed the file shut. The truth was staring him in the face. His family's empire wasn't built on hard work, it was built on the exploitation of children. The horrifying realization was too much to bear, but he couldn't turn away from it. He couldn't be complicit anymore. Meanwhile, Maya, too, was facing the consequences of the truths she was beginning to uncover. Her life had been turned upside down, and the weight of it all was starting to settle heavily on her young shoulders. The workshop she loved so much had become her sanctuary, but even here, she couldn't escape the looming presence of her past. She had learned about the Whitakers and their role in her life, but she also realized that her own gifts, her ability to understand machines, to fix them when they broke, were far more important than she had ever known. She wasn't just a little girl who fixed things on the side of the road. She was part of something much bigger. "I don't know what to do, Uncle Leon," she said one evening, looking up from her workbench. "Everything I've learned, it feels like it's too much. My mom, Diana, she was running from them. And now they're back. They want something from me." Leon placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maya, you're stronger than you know. Diana wouldn't have kept you safe all these years if she didn't think you could handle whatever comes next. But we've got your back. We always will." "I don't want to be part of this," Maya whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't want to be anyone's experiment." "You're not an experiment," Leon said firmly. "You're a fighter. You've been fixing things your whole life. Now it's time to fix this." Maya stared at the emerald ring on her finger, the stone glinting in the light. It was no longer just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of everything that had been taken from her, and everything she was about to take back. The following day, a black SUV pulled up in front of Maya's school. Two men in suits stepped out, their eyes scanning the crowd of students as they waited for Maya to leave the building. They had been instructed to bring her in. "Mr. Whitaker Sr. wants to see her immediately." But what they didn't know was that Leon had been watching them from across the street. When he saw them approach Maya, his heart raced. He had been expecting this. He pulled out his phone and dialed the emergency number Diana had given him all those years ago. "It's about little angels," he said in a low voice. "And a girl with an emerald ring. I've found the proof you're looking for." As the men in suits approached Maya, she froze, sensing something was wrong. But before they could reach her, Leon was there, standing between her and the two strangers. "Move along," Leon said calmly, but with an authority that made the men hesitate. They exchanged a glance, clearly unsure of how to handle the situation. Maya stepped back, clutching the ring on her finger. "You don't need to take me anywhere," she said, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her chest. "I know who you work for, and I know what you want." The men hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly turned and walked away, their mission thwarted, for now. Leon turned to Maya, his expression serious. "We need to go, Maya," he said. "It's time." At Whitaker Enterprises, Andrew was meeting with federal prosecutor Claire Bennett, who had arrived to discuss the shocking revelations about his father's secret program. The Horizon Project, the military applications, the exploitation of children. Andrew had finally gathered the courage to confront his father about everything that had been hidden for so long. Howard Whitaker, sitting across from Andrew in his sleek, glass-walled office, looked both furious and defensive. "What do you think you're doing, Andrew?" he sneered. "This is corporate espionage. You've crossed a line." Andrew's voice was calm, but filled with conviction. "I'm doing what's right, Dad. And I'm not doing it alone." Claire Bennett, the prosecutor, stepped forward, her face grim. "We have enough evidence to bring charges against your father and the company for illegal experiments on minors, falsification of records, bribery, and much more. The truth is coming out, Howard. And you're not going to stop it." Howard's face twisted with rage. "You think this is about truth? It's about power, Andrew. You've always been weak. You never understood what it took to build this empire." Andrew stood up, his voice rising. "No, Dad. I understand exactly what it took. And I'm done being part of it. This empire of yours, it's over." Howard sneered. "You don't know what you're up against. I built this company, this empire. It doesn't just disappear." Andrew didn't flinch. "It's already falling apart. And so are you." At that moment, the door to the office swung open. Two federal agents entered, their badges glinting in the light. "Mr. Whitaker, you're under arrest for a number of crimes, including child exploitation and illegal experimentation," one of the agents announced. Howard's face drained of color as the reality of the situation set in. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Meanwhile, Maya sat at home with Leon and Renee, her heart heavy with everything she had just learned. The truth about her past, the evil that had shaped her life, and the people who had manipulated her and others like her, she now knew exactly what she had to do. She slipped the emerald ring off her finger and stared at it for a long moment. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry anymore. It was a key to unlocking the truth, a symbol of everything that had been taken from her, and now, everything she was going to take back. With newfound resolve, Maya stood up and walked toward the door. "I'm going to fix this," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. The days following Howard Whitaker's arrest were a whirlwind. Whitaker Enterprises was in freefall. News of the empire's collapse spread like wildfire, and public outrage quickly turned into demands for accountability. The company's stock plummeted, and the investigation into its illegal activities reached far beyond what Andrew had ever imagined. Documents about the Horizon Project, secret military applications, and unethical experiments on children were laid bare for the world to see. Andrew, once the heir to a multi-billion-dollar fortune, now found himself standing in front of a very different kind of future, one that didn't involve wealth or power but truth, redemption, and rebuilding. In the midst of this chaos, Maya was starting to understand the full scope of her role in everything that was unfolding. She wasn't just a witness to the destruction of a corrupt empire, she was at the heart of it. The truth about little angels, the exploitation of children with exceptional abilities, and the secret program that had manipulated her life. Maya was the key to bringing it all to light. As the world watched Howard Whitaker's downfall, another story was quietly unfolding behind the scenes. The scandal surrounding the Whitaker family's empire had uncovered more than just criminal activities. It had exposed an entire system of exploitation, manipulation, and abuse that had remained hidden for years. But more than that, it had sparked a movement, one that Maya never could have predicted. At the Johnson Center for Young Inventors, a newly opened facility built on the same site where the Little Angels Orphanage once stood, Maya was beginning to understand just how far-reaching her influence had become. Now 15, she was no longer just the little girl who fixed things on the side of the road. She was a young woman, a symbol of resilience and change, and the leader of a program that was creating opportunities for children who had been overlooked and discarded by society. She stood in the center of one of the labs, watching a group of engineers as they worked to troubleshoot a malfunction in the building systems. Her sharp eyes instantly picked up on the problem, and she didn't hesitate to offer her input. "The sensors in the East Wing are still malfunctioning," she said, her voice confident and authoritative. "It's the wiring in the control panel. I'll fix it." The engineers exchanged looks, surprised by how easily she identified the issue. They had expected a more senior engineer to handle it, but Maya was far more than just another student. She had already published her third patent, and universities like Harvard, MIT, and Stanford were already vying for her to join their programs. But Maya wasn't interested in the prestige. She was focused on something more important, fixing the broken systems around her. Behind her, Andrew stood, his eyes following her every move. Once the heir to a corporate empire, he was now a man on a mission to make things right. He had donated his entire fortune to the Prometheus Initiative, a program designed to identify talented young people from marginalized communities and give them the resources and opportunities they deserved. "Just last quarter, we discovered 23 children with exceptional talents," Andrew said to a group of investors. "Each one receives a full scholarship and personalized mentoring. We're not exploiting them, we're giving them the opportunities they deserve, without contracts, without strings attached." The investors nodded, impressed with Andrew's transformation. He was no longer the ruthless businessman they had once known. He was a man dedicated to repairing the damage his family had caused, and he was determined to do everything in his power to right the wrongs of the past. At the back of the center, Leon, now the head of the engineering program, watched Maya work. He couldn't have been prouder of the young woman she had become. The girl who had once fixed cars on the side of the road was now leading a new generation of inventors, using her gifts to build something better. "Maya, I heard you're getting some offers from the big schools," Leon said with a smile as he walked up to her. Maya looked up from the panel she was working on. "Yeah, but I'm not going anywhere," she replied with a grin. "I've got a bigger job to do here." Her gaze shifted to the plaque on the wall, which read, "The Johnson Center for Young Inventors, Empowering the Next Generation." "I'm building something new, Uncle," Maya said softly. "Something that's going to last." At the same time, Howard Whitaker sat in a medium-security federal prison, his world crumbled beyond repair. The tycoon who had once controlled billions and manipulated lives now spent his days in a tiny cell, his arrogance and self-belief fading with every passing moment. "Where's my lawyer?" Howard demanded one day, glaring at the guard. "Don't bother," the guard replied. "You're not getting out of here. Not now, not ever." Howard's face twisted in anger. He refused to participate in any rehabilitation program, still clinging to the idea that he could one day escape his fate and rebuild his empire. But it was clear to everyone that the man who had once ruled the Whitaker dynasty was now a sad shadow of his former self. Back at the Johnson Center, the first major graduation ceremony was taking place. The room was filled with pride and excitement as 12 young inventors from disadvantaged communities received their diplomas. They had completed an intensive 2-year program that had taught them not just how to fix machines, but how to think critically, creatively, and responsibly. And each of them now had job offers or college scholarships in hand. Maya, still too young to graduate, stood in front of the group, ready to give the closing speech. She had been recognized as a mentor by her older peers, and it was clear that her impact on this program, and the world, was only just beginning. "When I was 10, Maya began, twirling the emerald ring on her finger, "I fixed a stranger's car on the side of the road. That small act of generosity exposed a web of exploitation, but it also paved the way for something new and better." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the audience. "My adoptive mother, Diana, used to say that broken machines can be fixed, but broken systems need to be redesigned from the ground up. That's what we're doing here. We're not just fixing what was wrong. We're building something entirely new." Andrew, standing at the back of the auditorium, wiped a tear from his eye. The girl who had destroyed his old world had, in fact, given him a purpose that no fortune could buy. A few days later, Maya received an unexpected letter. The sender was Victoria Whitaker, Howard's daughter, who had renounced her family name after the scandal and now worked as a federal prosecutor. "We found 5 more orphanages with programs similar to Little Angels," the letter read. "Thanks to your testimony and the evidence you gathered, we've been able to identify and protect 37 more children. Some have talents like yours. When you're ready, they'd love to meet you." Maya sat down with Leon, Renee, and Andrew to read the letter aloud. The sense of closure hung in the air, but there was also a quiet sense of anticipation. The battle was far from over, but Maya now knew what her next steps would be. As Maya looked out at the children playing in the center's gardens, she thought about the empire that had once sought to control her. The same empire that had been torn apart by greed, lies, and exploitation. But as the sun set over the building, she felt a quiet sense of hope. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. True power isn't in the buildings or bank accounts. It's in the ability to make a difference in other people's lives. As the new sign was unveiled at the entrance of the center, it read, "Every talent deserves to flourish. Every child deserves freedom." Maya knew that this was just the beginning. What had started as a small act of kindness on a dusty roadside had turned into a movement, one that was changing the world, one child at a time. And so, as the sun set on the horizon, a new promise was made. The future was not about rebuilding what had been broken, but about creating something new, something better. And this time, it was built on the foundation of truth, justice, and the unwavering belief that every child deserved a chance to flourish.